Hello, crypto world. Welcome to the Chart Historian. My name is Justin, and on this channel, I delve deep into crypto charts, exploring chart structures, fractals, and patterns. This video is going to be about Casper. It's been a while since I've done a video about Casper, but to be fair, there hasn't been too much action on the Casper chart. So I want to give a brief little update on how I see things progressing. Let's jump back to the beginning of the chart. So this is the beginning of the Casper chart. I'm on a 1-hour candle. I'm also using CoinTrader Pro. This allows me to go back to the beginning of the Casper chart on a 1-hour time frame. It's important to do this because the macro structure that is repeating on today's chart is actually printed here in a very small time frame. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of this repetitive structure. I've done many videos. You can go back and watch my previous videos and understand the repetitive nature of the Casper chart. I will briefly touch on it just in case you're new and you're wondering what I'm talking about. So Casper has a few key parts to its chart. Now, this, by the way, is not found on TradingView, this part of the chart. This goes back to before, well, actually TradingView does cover it, but it does, I can't zoom in on a small time frame. And I don't know which exchange this is being pulled from. Regardless, today's chart is following the basic principle, the basic idea of what is printed here. So there are a few key parts to it. There is a bull run, that's in the green. There's a declining part, which is in blue. And then there's a range-bound time, which is in black. Each of these parts has, at least I split it up into various structures or various fractals. For instance, the bull run has 3 key parts to it before it gets to its peak. These parts are really just corrections. The decline has 2 key parts to it, and the range-bound time has 3 key parts to it. This range-bound time, as you can see, it tends to last the longest compared to the other sections of the Casper chart. It's important to understand that when these fractals repeat, the timing, the height, and the depth, those play out uniquely, so it can give novelty in the way it looks, even though it's repeating the basic idea. To help you understand that, I will show you briefly what I'm talking about. So, for instance, here, this range-bound time, it starts with fractal 1, price moves up, it then moves down, moves back up again, and then kind of winds its way down to a point. We see the same thing that repeated once again over here. However, it looks different. So in this instance, it moves up, but it's just a short little move up, one candle basically. It moves back down, it moves back up, and then it moves down and kind of comes to a point before it moves back up again. It looks different, but the basic behavior of the move up, move down, move back up again, and then winding to a point before moving back up in the next fractal is what we're looking for. So we're looking for the functions that these structures do, not the appearance. So once again, it moves up, moves down, moves back up again, moves down, and comes to a point before moving up into the next structure. And the same principle applies in this structure. So it moves up, drops, does this bowl type structure, and then winds its way down to a point. In this one, it drops before going into the next structure. This one, it moves up, drops, goes flat, moves up again, creating a bowl, and then winds its way down to a point. This one, instead of going flat and then dropping like this one did, this one just winded its way down to a point. So there are some deviations in the way it plays out, but the basic idea is repeated. The third structure is a bounce in this sideways range-bound time, and that ends this sideways range-bound time. We see it here. So once that range-bound time is complete, it goes into the bull run structure. This played out on a massive scale. Now, I don't expect today's bull run to do that, nor even this amount that it went to. Today's Casper is a completely different animal in the sense of price, but structurally it is following this basic idea. Let's jump over to today's chart. So here we are on today's chart. Let's zoom out a little. So here is that range-bound time, and like the previous one I showed you where it moved up in one candle, so it moves up in a real short amount of time, drops, moves back up again, and winds its way down and goes flat at the end. So it kind of harkens back to this iteration where it moved up real quick. And this one was just one candle, moved down, moved back up again, dropped, and then went flat at the end. So we see that echo of history in this structure. So in Fractal 2, price moves up, drops, goes flat, moves back up again, creates that bowl structure. This one played out on a much larger time frame, so we have much more clarity. Actually, this little bounce, if you were to examine the second iteration of this, you see that there are waves in this part where it drops and goes flat. So after this bowl structure, it winds its way down to a point in the same way that this one did, this second iteration. After that comes a bounce, and today's chart, this one played out. It took a really long time for this one to play out. It really took the cake on as far as time goes. So now we're here. What is going on over here? Well, to understand what happens here, let's jump back to the original structure. So this is the beginning of the bull run structure, this first green box. This is what we are essentially doing. I break this up into three separate parts. So this is wave 1, here's wave 2, and here's wave 3. Now, it doesn't always play out like this. In previous iterations, this third wave actually drops really low. I'll show you what I'm talking about. This is the second time this structure played out. Over here, we have that bounce, which is the third ending structure of the range-bound time, and then we have the first bull run structure. Notice how we have this large bounce, and then this time it's just a small little kind of ending note to this greater bounce. See the same kind of concept here where it's a really large bounce, and then this is kind of just a little ending note to this larger bounce. Okay, so this is zoomed in. I'm on a 5-minute candle, so I'm zoomed in as much as I can. This played out on a really small time frame. On today's chart, of course, it's playing out on a much larger time frame. But you can see that there are 3 waves to it. Here's the first wave, here's the second wave, and here's the third wave. Notice how in this iteration, this third wave drops low, goes actually into this first wave zone, and then it kind of goes flat, and then it begins to move up into the second structure in the bull run. So here we have the different waves on today's chart. So this is wave 1, here is wave 2, and wave 3 doesn't really get much airtime when compared to the previous ones. But if we were to grab this fractal and copy and paste it onto today's chart. Now, of course, I've stretched it to match the timing, height, and depth of today's as much as I could. It's clearly not identical, but you can see the similarities. Now, the way this is playing out is a little different. For instance, on today's chart, this little peak right here is over here, whereas in this fractal, it takes place sooner. Now, it drops. We see that potentially at play right now. Now, I don't know if it's going to do this long flat thing and then move up. It could play out shorter. If it does, it could play out, yes, longer. If it does, the timing, height, and depth is going to be unique on this structure. But this is a clue as to what could potentially take place. We can compare this one as well to today's chart. Let's do that. Here is that one, of course, stretched to today's timing, height, and depth as much as I can. Now, there are clearly some similarities and differences. So we do have the waves. So we have the first wave, the second wave, and this one kind of has some similarities to today's chart too, where we have this like move up right here. On today's chart, it was very extreme. We have kind of the little 2 parts to this peak, and then it arches down. That kind of happened on today's chart. But on this third wave, it's clearly playing out much longer on today's chart. And it's also kind of arching down over time, whereas this one kind of held its ground a bit more. Let's compare them both together. All right, so here they are both side by side. You can see how today's chart takes bits and pieces from these previous structures and creates its own unique structure. So at some point, folks, and I know this is just going so slow, but at some point this chart is going to come to life. Eventually, it's going to complete this first structure and then move up into the next bull run structure. This is another corrective structure. It has two corrections, the first one, and then it moves up into the second one, and then finally it goes into the third correction. This third correction has potential to freak people out because the pullback is likely going to be intense. Of course, the timing, height, and depth is going to play out uniquely each time it repeats, but I would be prepared for a big pullback. Well, I hope this video was helpful. If you did find it helpful, it'd be much appreciated if you hit that thumbs up button. This is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. If you did enjoy this video and you're not yet a subscriber, I recommend hitting that subscribe button. I'll continue to follow up on this chart as it continues to develop. There's exciting days ahead. And folks, I don't know how high this bull run structure goes. I don't analyze price. It's kind of different from every other analyst. They're usually trying to analyze price and time and all those things. I don't do that. I just focus on structure. My goal is to ride the structure up to the peak. Once it's at the peak, wherever that is, I sell. By the way, I have a Patreon, and connected to that Patreon is a Discord. I have a channel there that is totally focused to Casper. You're welcome to join. It's a $5 a month subscription. We have great conversation around cryptos. So if it's something that you're interested, I'm very active on there. So you're welcome to join. It's a $5 a month subscription. I'll put a link to my Patreon in the description of this video. I'm so glad you caught this video. I hope you catch my next one. Have a great day, and bye for now.